Hi, welcome to this edition of Along the ForestApps Road. I'm Tim Ard. In 1989, I had the opportunity to travel to Sweden and Finland on a forestry tour sponsored by, at that time, the American Pulpwood Association, now known as the American Forest Resources Council. Soren Eriksson led the tour with a person from Valmet Equipment, Finland side, and Gränsfors Bruks during the time in Sweden, which the trip was pretty well known to Soren to be able to guide. We visited the forestry schools and consulates of each country. I was able to visit a couple power equipment stores while there to see how they do business. They sold chainsaws and clearing saws a lot in each of the places. Their high-volume businesses, however, was PPE, personal protective equipment, over 40% of their revenues, and fuels and oils. I was amazed they had liter after liter of pre-mixed fuel, mostly Stihl's Motomix, and in Sweden, aspen gas or aspen fuel in stacks in every store. They said they had switched to these fuels for the environment, cleaner air, and less fumes for the equipment operators to ingest. I had discussed the fuel with my supervisor and the sales side upon my return to see if they knew anything about the fuel and if it was in plans to bring it to the States. At that time, it wasn't very feasible and definitely not competitive with gasoline and mix oil costs that everyone was running. Then somewhere around 2006, I had the opportunity to hold chainsaw workshops on a couple islands in Hawaii. I was in Kauai when a pretty good storm hit, and we got the opportunity to do some training with the guys while working to open some roads. The morning started about 7 a.m., and the temperatures were already about 65 degrees. Then by noon, temps were in the high 80s. By 10 o'clock, their saws would not run very well. I tried adjusting the carburetors, but it didn't help. Once the temperatures raised, the saws would act really strange and hard to start if you shut them off. I began asking questions about the fuel they were using. They said they had fresh fuel. They knew that they were filling the saws from truck supplies and mixing it with two-cycle oil. When I asked a little deeper, I found the truck fuel was on a test the Hawaii DOT was conducting, running 20% ethanol gas in their vehicles. The problem was found. The carburetor would not meter the 20% alcohol. As temperatures raised, the engines leaned out. With a little more time, it could be catastrophic. In my trip to Scandinavia, I knew that Sears had commissioned the concept and canned fuel for Craftsman power tools. It was the only place in USA that had began to market the fuel. I drove over to a Sears hardware outlet I had seen on the island, and sure enough, they had 5 cans of Sears Craftsman fuel on the shelf. I bought 3 and took them back to the DOT the next morning. We filled a couple of saws to try it, and what a world of difference it made. They ran like they should now. Problem solved. When I returned to the mainland, I immediately told the story to my supervisor, David Perkins, and we began hunting down the source of the Sears fuel cannery. I located the company responsible for blending and canning the fuel. It was True South Oil from Louisiana. I contacted them, and they were in the process to begin bottling a 40 and 50 to 1 premix under the True Fuel label. I immediately began to use the fuel, and it made a huge difference in my equipment. So much more stable in mixture than I could get mixing it as I traveled, and it could be UPS ground shipped to where I needed it. I will say that True Fuel and Calumet Oil has supplied fuel for my training programs and some giveaways to participants for years since that time. Thank you to them. After they began marketing the True Fuel, Stihl began importing or blending the Motomix for USA sales. The canned or bottled fuel race was then off and running. VP Racing Fuels then began blending the SEF brand, and Husqvarna fuel began to show up on the marketplace. Every two-cycle manufacturer has gotten behind the fuel effort because the fuels and mixing problems in the past have cost lots of money in warranty repairs and rising equipment costs in general. Gasoline and mix oil have been a huge attributor to failure of the engines. Well, the other day I heard about Aspen fuel coming to the USA during one of my live YouTube broadcasts in a comment from a viewer. One of the distributors sent me some information and a sample of their Aspen 2 bottled fuel and their bio bar oil. I believe it is the same blend I was first shown in Sweden in 1989. Amazing how things keep circling around in the chainsaw world. As I told them, though, I am very partial to the True Fuel, as they have been very supportive of my training and the power equipment industry as a whole. However, I will be subjective in my findings on something, as my focus is on exceptional products for the chainsaw and other two-cycle operators. Lord knows there is a lot of gasoline suppliers out there for vehicles, and rightfully so. The users of chainsaws and other equipment, if they change, will need a lot of quarts, most likely from several suppliers. So let's look at an average, so to say, of the features of this type of fuel by can or bottle solution. Something all the suppliers can be positive about. Really, the only negative, if there is such a thing, is the cost. It's not cheap, but it is cost-effective in many applications. First, it meets or exceeds all fuel and mix oil requirements of the manufacturers. That's the JASO or JASO standards. 92 or higher octane rated, 2 to 5 years shelf life. Gasoline pump fuel is about 2 to 3 months. No ethanol. Mixed with synthetic oil to blend well and lubricate for long engine life. Clean burning emissions for less operator and environmental concerns. Convenient size packaging, eliminating extra fuel can costs. Quarts are shippable via ground transport like UPS and FedEx. Low smoke and odor. It eliminates mixing mess and mistakes. In my survey of users during my travel and training, they have reduced engine failures significantly with canned fuels. Reduces seizures and carburetor diaphragm, water, and plug fouling issues. So don't be fooled by the can. Fueled by the can or bottle is the way to happiness and profitability for the consumer and professional outdoor power two-cycle equipment, especially with chainsaws. So thanks for listening in or watching. I hope you've picked up some information that can help you and your fuel decisions. I'm Tim Ard of Forest Applications Training and along the ForestApps Road, wishing you good sawing.